All right, for everybody that's already seen it, I'm pretty sure everybody's seen it by now, the Cathy Newman versus Jordan Peterson debate. But if you haven't, here's a small recap.
So you say, I mean, that sounds pretty bad. You're saying
It's
there's a, right, you're just saying that's the way it is.
and that
So
you
you're
can
saying
rely on.
So
So
you're
if you
saying
want
women want to
domination,
dominate. Is that what you're saying?
no,
But what gives you the right to say that? I mean, right, so you're saying you've done your research.
I didn't say they were unhappy dominating men. I said it was a bad long-term solution.
I admire such a man.
Okay, you said it was
It's not
making
the
them
same
miserable.
thing. Yes.
So it seems to a lot of women that they're still being dominated and excluded, to quote your words back to you.
Multivariate analysis of the pay gap indicate that it doesn't exist.
What style is that?
But you're saying basically it doesn't matter if women aren't getting to the top. Yeah, but
And that
those
aren't being
reasons,
taken into
why
account.
should women put up with those reasons? I'm not saying why it exists, but it exists.
With no evidence, you can do nothing.
But do you agree that it's unfair? Again, a vast generalization. So you were saying that, okay, so rather than denying the pay gap exists, so the pay gap exists, you accept that, but why shouldn't women have the right to choose not to have children or the right to choose those demanding careers?
do.
But you're saying that makes them unhappy, by and large.
I'm saying no, I'm not saying that.
I think I take issue with the idea of the typical woman. So you're saying women are just more. Is gender equality a myth? Right, so you're saying, but still women aren't going to make it. That's what you're really
It
saying.
depends on
So
who
you don't
defines
believe
it.
in equal pay?
No, I'm not saying that at all.
To understand what I mean, just hear what I say.
The
That's
dark
because
ages
they're actually
here.
not listening.
I'm
They're just
listening very
projecting
carefully,
what
and
they
I'm
think.
hearing you basically saying, so that's the thing, successful women, I'm not very agreeable.
Right.
So
And
you're
so does
saying
high
that
negative.
why should your right to freedom of speech trump a trans person's right not to be offended?
Very soon, something really important will happen.
So you haven't sat there and I'm just trying to work that out. I mean,
No, that was stupid. And you're going to regret it.
Ha, gotcha.
How dare you challenge me with your so-called kung fu? You don't have a chance.
Okay, so out of that, there was one point that I wanted to pull out of there and kind of cover, and I'm doing this because I think he kind of missed the mark on this. He had an opportunity, of course, you know, he kept on getting cut off, so he didn't really get a chance to say anything. But there was a point where he said, well, yeah, it'd be fine if somebody actually did the research and looked up if women had particular roles, or they, you know, if the bosses who were dominated by women or dominated by men or some other shit like that, if they would take the opportunity to adopt feminine traits, and maybe that would just make it easier for women. Well, it turns out that research has been done, as you can see here: gender role, self-concept, categorical gender, and transactional transformational leadership. So this was a study done in 2014 out of my own school, University of Phoenix. Originally was a dissertation, I believe, and it's actually quite interesting as far as a study goes. I know that, you know, most people don't like to read these things because they're basically, when you write one of these, you got to pull out the thesaurus and really make an effort to sound intelligent. You can't use common tongue. You really have to write at the very high college level, making it very difficult to understand at times. But that's okay. I'm going to go through with it and not make it as boring as possible. So first thing I'm going to point out is basically what they did was they took a bunch of work groups, evaluated their management, and then evaluated the approach that management used, both male and female, and kind of split down the middle. So what they did was they had 67 work groups. They used a quantitative approach, so they used statistics to measure all this. And if you want to see the statistical analysis and whatnot, what I'll do is I'll put a reference in the footnotes below in the comment section, so that you can look this up at your leisure if you really want to read it. But okay, so there's a couple things I wanted to point out in this in particular. So yes, they did the research, and as you can see, it says gender role, self-concept, categorical gender, and transactional transformation leadership. But basically, they were looking at the leadership styles and approaches of men and women to see what, if anything, needs to change for men and women. They had 3 different hypotheses. They tested all 3. The third one failed. The first 2 did better than they expected, but there was always a failure out of all of them. So let's go down a little bit, because there's some language that I need to translate for you in this so it makes sense before I get to the meat and potatoes. So when we come down to gender role self-concept, what they're talking about is that basically the concepts of self emerge from internalized gender roles, is how they put it. So basically, women acting like women, men acting like men, and they use the stereotypical approach to address this. They also had a 4th type. What they said down here, if you see that, if you want to put it into categories, is that they had essentially 4 types of self roles that could be differentiated. So they had basically strong feminine, so high on the feminine scale, low on the masculine scale. They had strong masculine, which is high on masculine, lower on feminine, obviously, so those are split. And then they had androgynous, and by androgynous what they mean is that they scored high on feminine and masculine traits. So both of these traits, male and female, were high. And then they had the undifferentiated scaling, which is people that scored low on both traits. So it's very important. This will come into play in a moment, but just kind of understand that this is where it's coming from, that they split them into 4 categories to analyze each one of these, because they use the scaling to do that. So I want to get into the scale real quick, because I think that's really important to nail down one of the points that Jordan Peterson made, where Cathy Newman just tried to say something stupid like this. Run clip. So you're saying women are not intelligent? In actuality, what he was referring to was behavior traits, and he never said that women are less intelligent than men, or that they behave different than men, but he did say that women are more agreeable, and that's not exactly a trait for success. Well, he's right in that case. So let me go over to the traits. I have them up for you in one of the references that was actually used in this particular study, so that you can see what they're talking about. So acts as a leader. Acts as a leader in the first one, just for the masculine traits. That's basically somebody that is willing and able to stand up and tell people what to do, essentially. I don't know how else to describe that. They're the ones that normally take up and just stand up front, want to lead people to victory, if you want to call it that. They're your archetype of the king, or the football coach, or however you want to put it. They're the people that want to get up there and make things happen. You'll also see some other traits in here. Self-reliant, aggressive, ambitious, and so on and so forth. On the other side, you have the affectionate, cheerful, childlike, and by childlike means more playful, not acting like a child, but more adventurous and playful. So don't take that the wrong way, weirdo-ass feminists. Women tend to swear less, things like that. They're sensitive to others' needs, they're sympathetic, they're tender. These are all things that are associated with women. Now, I want to point to the neutral items, and funny enough, the neutral items are also mostly the big 5. The big 5 are listed in here, which I found hilarious, because these are the ones that he pointed to. So for number 9, for example, conscientiousness. He said intelligence and conscientiousness predict success. Conscientious is a neutral item, meaning that it's androgynous. It shows up in both women and men. It doesn't say women are not conscientious. It says both experience this. And another thing that he nailed down that was wonderful, because it falls into his psychology area, is that intelligence across the board of men and women is flat, like they're even. On average, they're the same. You know, you have some scale differences when it comes to the scaling of it, but essentially, like, men and women right down the middle. There's no difference. You don't see in here any of the female traits, like he said. For example, compassionate, I guess you could put it as well, or agreeable. those are more feminine traits, and that's kind of, it's true to a sense. Men can be agreeable as well, which is why this is on a scale and not an archetype. It's not this is a man, this is a woman. Both can be fluctuating, and that's kind of what this actual study gets into as a source, that it's more like a scale, and men tend to have more of these, but they can have feminine traits, or they have neutral traits. It's not all of these, and this is your male, and that's it. No, you'll find that it fluctuates between the two, and that's normal. No, it's not a new fucking gender. It's just, that's the way it is. So I'm going to scroll down here in a little bit, and I'm going to show you, skipping past the hypotheses. The method, as you can see, was all mathematic. Oh, that was fun to read through. But that's the first one. Where are you? There you go. So figure 1. So you see high female, high male. They were on the charisma scale, because they measured this by a few different factors. For charisma and inspiration, the high male and female traits, where they had both, scored extremely well. The undifferentiated, the ones that scored low on both, they pretty much don't stand out, is what it comes to. They sucked. Low female and high male was better, but it only slightly. The ones that had high female and male traits, the ones that had a little bit of feminine in them as well as masculine, did better overall. What this tells us is that, yes, a man, if they have some feminine traits, do more or are more successful, or androgynous traits is also what's included in here. They do better overall than if you're just high masculine and low feminine. And you can see that here, where it's this low feminine and high masculine is right there. So high masculine and low feminine traits, so just a little bit of femininity, you do better than if you were to flip that. High femininity and low masculinity, you do worse. This is not to say that women can't do it, it's just that say they have to be more adaptable to their behaviors. The ones that had both high male and female traits did overall the best. That should tell you something, that a good blend of both from the get-go is probably the best. You can be masculine and still be a pretty effective leader, but it's better to have a little bit of both. And it's reset right here, where you go to the monitor regression on work group performance in male managers. This is contingent reward and whatnot. And if you look in this one, it's female managers and charisma and inspiration is what they measured. This one is the contingent reward, which is you work for shekels, essentially, kind of the same thing. And you'll see this one's kind of all over the damn board. But if you're high feminine masculine, if you have low contingent reward, you suck. But if you have a high, you're the best. And these two slopes went down. So high masculine, high feminine, and opposite lows, they don't do as well. And the lowers, for some reason, went from negative to positive. And that was interesting as well, because what they're talking about here is contingent reward is like, I have a job for you to do. Here's a bonus salary if you complete it. It's really kind of transactional. There's not a whole lot of leadership involved there. You're basically paying somebody for a job to do something. That's it. It's not anything that requires some inspiration or coaching or anything of the like. It's pretty straightforward. There's nothing surprising about this in particular. They did find that actually high female traits tended to do better when it came to contingent reward for some reason in this, but let me get down to this section right here. So, four-way interaction, gender roles, concept, male and female managers. You can see that undifferentiated is always worse than masculine. So the ones that have low female-male traits, meaning that they scored low in the Big Five male-female kind of test, they didn't do very well. But androgynous was always better than positive undifferentiated, negative masculinity, and negative femininity. So meaning that if you had a positive masculinity and femininity, and along with that you had the androgynous stuff, which is a mixture of both, which are key indicators for success, mind you. You did well. What this whole thing says, essentially, is androgynous, which are both male and female traits, masculine, strong masculine, and strong feminine, depending on your work groups and what you're trying to get out of them, do well. Meaning that, yeah, if you are a feminine person, it does well to do that, but it also helps to have those additional androgynous traits. Back here, if you look at the chart, yeah, conscientiousness, conceited, adaptable, conventional, inefficient is also a neutral item, which kind of sucks. Reliable, tactful, these are all basic leadership traits for successful leader, rather. Although you can be successful with some of these bad ones too, but yeah, you look at the relatively what you would call good or moral traits to say that that's a good or moral leader. So I'm just highlighting those. But essentially, this is what it is. It's you have some feminine traits, and you have some masculine traits, and you have the neutral items, they're androgynous traits, and if you have high in all of those, you tend to do well. Now, going back to this guy, there was a line in the conclusion that I'd wanted to spit out at you. I think it's this paragraph right here. Yeah. So I'm going to read you the couple sections right here, and then I'll wrap it up. So our findings point to a potential relevance of leaders' gender role self-concepts in addition to their leadership behaviors. Organizations aiming to enhance female leaders' career progression may be well advised to encourage female leaders to develop and display various transformational leadership behaviors. And to get into those, it's like charisma, adaptability, and those are neutral gender traits, basically. What is interesting from our study is that female leaders, and indeed the organizations they work for, should think about the extent to which they possess gender-typical attributes. Our study suggests that although it would be advantageous for them to have masculine and or feminine traits, what does not work is if they lack both. So if they have neither male nor female traits, they suck. They just blend into the crowd. You're not a leader. This lack of gender-typical attributes seems to be particularly negative when in charisma and inspiration, which are two parts of transformational leadership. When female leaders lack both feminine and masculine attributes with regard to the implied roles deficits, they may seem to lack both interpersonal warmth and professional competence. For male leaders, our findings suggest that possessing feminine and masculine attributes, or being androgynous, is advantageous, especially when using contingent reward, as this might result in increased work group performance. So in other words, for women in charisma and inspiration, which is something that's naturally lacking at times, depending on the woman, of course, there is plenty of women that can be very charismatic, and typically they're very successful, ironically. If they lack some of the masculine traits, some of the traits of standing out and being a leader, not afraid to step up, that type of thing, you're not going to do very well. For men, if you don't practice some agreeableness, conscientiousness, and things like that that are more middle or feminine, you're not going to do very well. So getting down to the last section I wanted to read for you. From a more practical perspective, organizational career management programs may offer trainings for both female and male leaders in, for example, self-assertiveness along with communication skills to ensure these leaders develop and possess the gender-typical attributes that can be positively influence effectiveness. Conventionally, this is recommended that female leaders should be trained in self-assertiveness and males should be trained in communication skills, because yes, women are better communicators, thereby compensating for stereotypically assumed deficits: lack of assertiveness in female leaders, lack of communication skills in male leaders. Yes, as you saw over here, some of the not so middle, but over here, eager to soothe hurt feelings, does not use harsh words, flatterable, feminine, loves children, loyal, sensitive to the needs of others, soft-spoken, sympathetic, understanding. These are all bonuses for communication. These are all feminine traits. They are better communicators than men. Men do not communicate well. Well, on average, I should say. You know how she loved the broad generalizations? Well, when you're studying personalities over 1,000 people, what the fuck do you expect to happen? Everybody be static in a flat board? That's not how things work. Anyways, our suggestion is to train female and male leaders in both in self-assertiveness and communication skills. This way, female leaders could be equipped with the feminine and/or masculine attributes they need to avoid being undifferentiated, whereas male leaders could be provided with feminine and masculine attributes that they need to demonstrate androgyny. So what they're saying is women need more male traits such as assertiveness. And assertiveness training would go a long way to helping them. In fact, if you listen to his talk, he said that he went and trained a bunch of women on basically assertiveness training, is what he called it, to help them learn how to be more competent, ask for the raise, demand things, be less agreeable, stand up for themselves, essentially. This is what he's talking about. This is a study that says that in leadership in particular, that this, for leaders, for women that want to be the boss, it's beneficial to them to learn these skills. They don't necessarily have them naturally, which is possible. Maybe they do, maybe they don't, and maybe they, but more than likely they don't, on average, Cathy. But it wouldn't hurt for them to go through this very training. They might have gotten there on skill alone, say they got to management on skill alone, but they want to take that next level and they can't figure out how. Well, this would help them. Similarly, for a man, it could be that they're just too masculine, per se. Say they're the archetypes that are listed here, aggressive, ambitious, very analytical, athletic, competitive, very dominant and forceful, things like that. They have no problem staring a person down, for example, things like that. They could learn to be a more androgynous, more neutral. So they could be they need to learn how to be better communicators. They can be more adaptable, friendly, and helpful rather than domineering. Learn some tact. Not all men know that very well. And unsystematic. Men are very systematic. They're very technically oriented, I guess you could put it. That's something in my area of expertise. And it's just, they could learn to be untechnical, I guess you could say. Or they could indeed learn some of the feminine traits as well, to be more compassionate, affectionate, and things like that. Some things that are a little bit more difficult for men to express, and it also makes them vulnerable, which is another story for another time about leadership in general. Anyways, I hope that found that interesting for you. Maybe, maybe not. This is my field of expertise. I did my degree in this stuff, so I wanted to comment on it because I thought it was an opportunity missed, and she kept on just not hammering it home. And then for Jordan Peterson, if he actually watches this, this might be of interest to you. I'll leave the DOI and all that in the description below. It touches on your psychology area very much, but it also looks at the relationship between leader and follower, which is a social construct, as it were, in the social hierarchy. And for women that have not, they have not been in leadership roles for very long, 60, 70 years, there have been some that have been there longer than others, and usually it's through a monarchy of some sort. Well, I hope you enjoyed this video. Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed this. Goodbye.
I will always be most grateful. I must leave now.